Bonsoir, Montréal-Python. Hi, Montreal-Python. Est-ce que là, on voit bien mon écran? OK, j'imagine que oui. OK, c'est ça. Merci d'être là, tout le monde, ce soir avec nous. Bienvenue à Montréal-Python 98, Mollusque, Westphalien. C'est toujours la misère à prononcer notre événement, mais bon. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Montreal-Python 98, Westphalian Mollusque. Anyway. OK. C'est ça, c'est notre dernier événement de l'année. Alors, moi, j'ai déjà ma bière ici. Je vais déjà commencer à l'ouvrir parce que là, aujourd'hui, on fête notre dernier événement avant l'année. Fait que je vous invite à faire la même chose. Je suis sûr que Yannick, mon collègue, il a déjà ouvert aussi la sienne. So, welcome to the last event before the end of the year. So, I already have my beer open. We're gonna celebrate this last one. Let me taste. OK. So, je vais juste profiter de l'occasion pour vous souhaiter joyeux temps des fêtes. Je sais que on est juste en novembre, mais vu que on va plus se voir d'ici avant la fin d'année, mais je vous souhaite un joyeux temps des fêtes. Puis prenez du temps pour profiter de ce moment-là avec votre famille. Au nom de l'organisation, je vous souhaite un joyeux fête. Et I just want to take a moment to wish you the happy holidays. Take some time to enjoy the time with your family. OK. For si à Montréal-Python, on veut que tout le monde soit, tout le monde s'amuse et tout ça, mais on a quand même le code de conduite qui est, il faut être gentil avec tout le monde. On aime ça partager. Et si vous voyez quelque chose qui n'est pas correct, vous pouvez nous envoyer un message sur Slack ou vous pouvez mettre un commentaire sur notre YouTube channel. Mais notre équipe va faire en sorte de régler ce problème. At Montreal-Python, Montreal-Python, we have a code of conduct. So we want everybody to be nice with each other. So if you see something that is not nice, you can send us a message on our Slack channel or on our YouTube channel, and we will try to fix the problem. OK, c'est bon. Vu que j'ai pas d'autres choses à annoncer, on va commencer tout de suite avec notre première présentation. Je vais juste arrêter le share screen ici. Je vais ajouter tout de suite la présentation. Mais je vais amener notre premier présentateur ici. Vlad. Hi, Vlad.
Yes, hi, Duke.
How are you?
I'm pretty well. What about you?
Cool. OK, je vais juste faire une petite introduction parce qu'il vient de loin. Il est ukrainien et on sait que chez eux, en ce moment, c'est vraiment pas facile. Alors, laissez-moi, aidez-moi à lui donner un peu d'amour, s'il vous plaît. Wouhou! Mais I just want to take a time a bit to welcome Vlad because he is really far from us right now. He is from Ukraine.
Yes.
And we know that it's not easy right now at Ukraine. So help me give some love for Vlad. Yeah. Okay, I'm finished. So I let you take the control of the event. Okay, Vlad. See you a bit later.
Can I start?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
These days I was working on interesting project. I was working on Scrapy project, and I was thinking about how to integrate Flask with Scrapy, because we can use different libraries in Scrapy, like request to crawl data, but it is not comfortable. Uh, Due to Scrapy much more powerful, much more useful, much more comfortable. So I found out uh, the option how to do it. So I want to start from to to discuss what is actually Flask and Scrapy. Little bit words. Flask is a micro-web framework, and it has no data abstraction layer, form validation, or other components. It just have small features, small things that can be bigger. It can helps to develop a big project, and so powerful project. And Scrapy is a free and open source web scrolling framework, and it needs for extracting some data from website or APIs. Scrapy project architecture is built around spiders, which are self-contained crawlers and are given a set of instructions, following the spin of other don't repeat yourself frameworks such as Django. It makes it easier to build and scale large crawling projects by allowing developers to reuse their codes. So the main question, how to integrate these tools together? And I found the solution, and solution is Crotchet. It is a MIT license library that makes it easier to use Twisted from regular blocking code. Some use cases include easily used Twisted from blocking framework like Django and Flask, of course. Write a library that provides a blocking APIs, but use Twisted for its implementation. Port blocking code to Twisted more easily by keeping a backwards compatibility layer, and allow normal Twisted programs that use threads to interact with Twisted more cleanly from their threaded parts. For example, this can be useful when using Twisted as a VCIG container. So let's focus on the first inclusion, and it is exactly what we need. So firstly, we need to create Scrapy project, and Spider. Spider we need. So here we can see a tree of directories and files. It is already created Scrapy project and Spider as well. Here we have main spiders, and first file it is init spider. The file contains a script that generate and prepare parameters for requests, for following requests. And the second file, it is the main spider that extracts data we need. So the step 2 is creation of Flask project directory and set settings. So here we have another tree, another directories, and here we have some couple of main files, and first of them app.py. We can call it like a controller. Also here I used PostgreSQL, so I also created a credentials file for the database, and the next file. It is a database dispatcher. It is like when Scrapy extracted all data and put it into database. This file we use for extracting the data from database. And models. Yes, here we have Postgres database, Postgres database creation, inserting, and etc. And the maybe the most important thing for my subject is scrapysite.py. The file contains a cratched script that the script trigger the Scrapy project, Scrapy spiders, and Scrapy spider executes the code separated from Flask, and when it finished, it put the data to database, and Flask can retrieve the data and show to the user. So here we can see the main files, the cratched script. For example, here we importing necessary packages and libraries for Scrapy. Then we import model and database dispatcher, model to insert extracted data, and the third step we need to initialize Crotchet and crawler runner. I created it like class build, so we have a class and function inside of it. First of all, the first function is parse data, called parse data. It is a main function that triggers spider and send extracted data when spider had put all data into database. Then we have crawler result. Here, Scrapy opens its function when data is extracted and all crawling process finished. So when crawling process is finished, we need to save data, and this function saved it. The next function called Scrapy Crotchet. It is initialize signal and pass final function, trigger selected spider and pass URL to extract data from. Add callback to select function to determine if extracting is finished. So here we have dispatcher.connect attribute, and we need to pass function what will be used when the crawling process is finished, and signal to trigger spider. Then we trigger spider, use crawler runner dot crawl, and here we put spider class and URL to parse. Then we ask it to add callback when crawling process will be finished. And in this function finish scrape, this function determine if extracting data is finished. So small code, I think it is understandable, and I want to show you a result. Here I have Flask API, Scrapy project. So I run it. Let me run it. It looks like just simple site with two forms. First to update database. It means extract data, and second, to show what we extracted. And let me just put needed URL. It works for a special site. Let me click on update. We need to wait a little bit because these projects work separately, but one trigger another. Yes, crawler process is finished, and we can see the data from site we put it into this form. For example, we can see what we extracted. We can see the name of product, type of price, currency, photo of the product, and a deep link to a site. So, for example, for this position, we extracted this product, and we can see on the live site if we extracted it correctly. And it seems it was correct. Also, I put the project to GitHub, and if you want to deep into the code and find out how it works exactly from all files from Scrapy and Flask and see all process, you can just follow the URL to my GitHub, and it would be great if you connect me in LinkedIn as well. So my presentation is finished. Maybe questions so far?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Vlad. Let me bring up Yannick. He is going to take care of questions. Hi, Yannick.
Hello. Well,
Hello.
thank you so much for the presentation, Vladyslav. And everyone, you can ask your questions either in the YouTube comments or on Slack if you're with us on Slack. And I will be happy to relay those out loud to Vladyslav. So while people are thinking of their questions, I don't see any questions exactly right now. I have a question for you, Vladyslav. So by going with Twisted, I assume that you can have more concurrent processing, and the main motivation is probably to get more performance out of your scraper. Is that the main motivation?
Can I break you?
Yeah.
Could you please tell slowly, because I have not excellent English. It's my second language.
No problem. And I confess I'm a little excited because that was an exciting presentation. So you decided to integrate with Twisted. Was the motivation to get more parallel processing out of Twisted to get more performance out of the your scraper?
Yes. It is more. At least it's more comfortable to use Scrapy because we can send parallel requests.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to do it using Scrapy, unless use request library, for example, and use beautiful SOAP or LXML to extract data. It's also, in my point of view, terrible, and better to use selectors and XPath. It's more. Also, it's more comfortable. So my motivation was based on it.
And what kind of performance improvement did you see by going with Twisted instead of just plain Scrapy?
Sorry?
So did you see a big speed up by starting to use Crochet and Twisted compared to just plain Scrapy?
Yes, of course. It takes about a couple of seconds to send a lot of requests and get data, unless user just request library. So yes, it's more faster than use requests, as we said.
Very good. There is a question by Luciano who's asking for a clickable GitHub link for the project. We will get that in the comments in just a moment. Luciano and everybody else, don't be shy. You can ask questions in the YouTube comments or on Slack. I don't see any questions on Slack right now. Let me see. Maybe we can, if you want, Vladyslav, to post the GitHub link in the private chat here on StreamYard, I will relay it to the YouTube comments so that Luciano and the others can click on it.
Sure. Private chat, yeah. Private chat.
Yes, the private chat should be on your right-hand side.
Yes, I see.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let me put that right here. And that should be visible for everyone. All right, so I don't see any other questions. So I think that your presentation was clear. Thank you so much, Vladyslav, for joining from so far, and I hope that you guys will see some resolution in that terrible event that is going on in your country.
Thank you. I'm glad to. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Vlad and Yannick. Let me move you guys from the thing and let's move up to another. Hi, Janet.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay,
hear
awesome.
you correctly. Cool. So I let you take care of the things, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, see you later.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about some various jupyterlab plugins that I've been using lately. The screen here. So I'm going to just do a little bit of introduction about who I am. If you're still using Jupyter Notebook, I'm going to do a quick demo on the difference between plain Jupyter Notebook versus JupyterLab. I'm going to do a couple of very simple plugins and then a couple of fancier ones. And they're just going to be, real quick, how do you install them and what do they look like? And not too much technical demo on each individual one, because I had kind of a thing, do I want to go through a lot of things really quickly or do I want to do a few things in depth? And I kind of went for quantity over quality. So hopefully not too low of a quality, but yeah, more for quantity here. So hi, I'm Janet. I am a Python data engineer in the Seattle area. I work in an engineering R&D department at a company called Echodyne that makes radar. This is the part we'd probably talk about, your speaker's very impressive background. My very impressive background is I was a software developer way back in the dark ages. And then I took like 20 years off to raise my kids. And then I did a data science boot camp to get some current skills. And then I went back into the workforce. And so when I was thinking about what could I give a talk on that's really changed over the 3 years that I've been doing Python. And one of the things that's really changed is how do I install my Jupyter working environment? So you're going to just see just kind of progressively more complicated pip install statements here. I'm not sure. That's a bad slide. So first part is Jupyter Notebook versus JupyterLab. So when I did my data science boot camp, we were all just using Jupyter Notebook. It's kind of the tried and true, pip install Jupyter, run Jupyter Notebook. It has improved quite a bit since the famous, I don't like Jupyter Notebooks talk, but it's still very much a, do one thing at a time user experience. It's kind of a longer ways away from, an integrated development environment. JupyterLab, you pip install JupyterLab, you run it with the command JupyterLab instead of just Jupyter Notebook. It has an improved notebook experience, But more importantly, it's made to multitask. So you can open Notebook, but you can also open Python source files and terminals and CSV and Markdown and HTML. So plain demo. So this is Jupyter Notebook. I just got a simple notebook in here. I'm not sure why it's not there. So I just importing the Palmer Penguins data set, just a simple like data science training data set, unloading it and doing a few simple things, look at the notebook, look at the data, make a quick histogram. I did a group by here and made a table, and I saved the female penguins on the Dealey Island to a CSV file. In Jupyter Lab, and it looks like it blew up all of my windows simultaneously. This is going to be an interesting demo. Okay, so in Jupyter Lab, the first thing you'll notice is if I want to go through and get, say to my README file over here, I would need to do, open, it takes me somewhere else. I click on my README, it opens up a new tab. It's really clunky to switch back and forth. Whereas in Jupyter Lab, where did it go? There. You have all of your files are in one place, and you can just click on them and open them. Here's the CSV I created. Here's my Markdown. It also has Markdown preview. So if you want to, and these tabs are resizable, so if I want to this install Palmer, I wouldn't say, there's some usage instructions there. Okay, it's probably going to install, but whatever. You can install it, you can see how it's going to look when it gets rendered at the same time. And there's just a whole bunch of different things that you can open in here. You can open CSVs. You can open, right here I had a JSON file where you can kind of browse through it. There's actually several flavors of the JSON thing. There's a plain JSON. There's editor if you actually want to edit your JSON by hand. There's things specific to React and Vega if you happen to use those packages. And yeah, and then the other thing, if you start building your Jupyter notebook and you've discovered that you've maybe created a really long function, you kind of know that it should be in a separate file and not embedded in your notebook, but it's really hard in the old notebook interface to do that. Whereas it's very easy to have notebooks on the side and in Python files and run them simultaneously. Another cool trick, I'm going to do one more here. I made this table of what you found on each island in this penguins data set. And as I'm going through my analysis, I keep losing track of what's my data set size for each of these buckets. You can test output and create a new view for it. And just kind of keep that view off to the side so you don't lose track of those value counts while you're trying to build your notebook. And if you decide, gosh, I really wanted the island names to go across the columns and the species to go, you want the species to go across the columns instead of the rows, and you take the transpose up. Let's go back and run this. I have so many virtual environments, it's not even funny. But yeah, when I update that cell, my view of that output always changes. And so it's just a more sophisticated environment right out of the box. It includes a table of contents. So if I had a really long notebook, I could scroll from spot to spot. The scrolling can be done either by your Markdown tags or by the code or by both. You just kind of toggle them here. And I think I'm going to go on to some of the plugins from there, unless people have questions about the regular Jupyter lab environment. Okay. So after you started doing pip, after I started doing like just pip install jupyterlab, you know, I kind of started playing around with additional plugins. And so this next demo is pip install with jupyterlab, execute time, and IPyMPL. So that execute time is what it sounds like here. So every time I run a thing, it tells me how many seconds it took to implement it. But yeah, just running the same things. IPyMPL is what takes your plots from matplotlib and turns them into interactive plots. So if I wanted to grab things and re-scroll it or resize it, and then maybe I like that view the best, and then I'll download that so that that's the one that I'm going to paste into my final report, say. IPyMPL has a lovely demo notebook that you can get from their repo on GitHub. So this is just their demo notebook. And it shows like a little bit more what you can do with it besides, you know, my little histogram plot in my demo notebook here. But the one that I use all the time is this guy right here, because I work with radar data, and radar data is very three-dimensional. You have the radar on one point, and then you have targets in 3D space around it over time. And so being able to take my 3D plots and spin them around to the radars, which way the radar was pointing, and look at how my data is changing over time. It's something I use all the time. And again, once you get, you know, the size and the zoom and, you know, the various things that you can adjust done, you take a picture of it and put it, you know, in your slide or what, your report or whatever you're going to do with it. So then getting fancy, a little pun there. The next demo I'm going to do is jupyterlab Git, which is kind of what it sounds like. You can integrate Git into jupyterlab. That one should be in this tab, and let's close that. So what I've added here is this little Git tab. And so I can say, oh, what's changed? Yeah, if I'm going to add something to stage it or whatever, I can see what I've changed before. Do I need to make that bigger? It's got code in it. Maybe you want to read. I can see what I've changed in my function. I can add things. And then if I want to commit it here, I can. I'm going to commit. And it actually has a couple of options where you can create a new commit or amend the new commit. A lot of times, if I'm doing anything fancy though, I'll usually just be in a terminal, like git stash, and things are not available in the GUI yet. And so with this one, yeah, you can see all your branches here. I just made a quick demo. So I didn't really create branches and things, but it also works. Let me go back here. I didn't change one. Okay, so let's go open the Git example. And we'll run it. And then maybe I'll change my mind and say that's really not enough. Let's look at the first 20 rows instead. The little orange there means that my output is not in sync with the code. So it's kind of a little warning to me that, you know, I need to rerun that cell. And then Git should be telling me, hopefully I'll better save it first. Git now tells me that my notebook changed. And I can see that, you know, the metadata changed here. And then here's like an output that was added. Usually when I check things into Git, I'm going to strip most of the output because you know, the metadata, if you don't strip the metadata and the output, it just makes your Git history kind of messy. And then it hides all the cells that didn't change, so that it's a really quick and easy way if you're saving things to get regularly while you're working, and then something breaks, it's easy to go back and say, oh, what did I change since the last time it was working? And then the Git diff is also available in that little Git icon at the top of the notebook. And then, gosh, I'm talking way too fast. Sorry. The last one I wanted to show So as I've kind of gotten used to more and more plugins, this is an example of a language server. Language servers are kind of like how the integrated development environments work with Jupyter, or with really any IDE. And so for this one, when I install JupyterLab, the language server protocol, I actually have to install a language server. There's several of them. I'll talk about them when I switch to the demo tab. But the language server actually is a plugin to the plugin. And then I put the Flake8 and Row plugins into my plugin. So now my plugin has a plugin which has two plugins. So that one is a little bit harder to, it took me a little bit longer to figure out how to do that and how to get the plugins that gave me the output that I was looking for without stuff that, was too annoying output. And there's no tab there for the demo, so we'll just do that. So let's start here with some of the things that you can do with it. So it's like showing me these little underbars. Actually, let's start with just kind of understanding language servers. So when you first install the language server, the JupyterLab LSP, you want to see if it actually fully initialized, which is this little thing down here. And it did initialize. If it didn't, there's this little link right here to the documentation, which tells you all of the language servers that are available. And let's make that one bigger too. And not sure how to put that in dark mode. Okay, well, we'll just go with it. So there are several different things. You can have a Python language server, a Julia language server, an R language server, robot framework, Bash, Docker, SQL, JavaScript and TypeScript, Markdown, Python, GitHub flavored Markdown, GitHub flavored Markdown, some of the HTML, JSON, YAML, and various hints on how to install them. Jedi language server is probably the easiest one to start with. Python LSP server is one that, if you've used the Spider IDE tool, that's the one that they use. And then Pywrite, if you've heard of that one, is from Microsoft, and that's what was inside of VS Code, if you've ever used the VS Code language server to find your Python errors. And then I just got a Python one installed at the moment, so that's why I was showing that. If I want to know what these orange things mean, you can kind of hover on them and then convert a string or number to a floating point number, if possible. And it's like, I'm not sure what that's, why it's telling me that. Yeah, or this one here, it's suggesting that, but I should have a space after my comma. If I get that one over. Oh gosh, that's way too tiny. So the other thing you can do actually is a diagnostics panel. And they'll show you all of the things that it's underlining. So, maybe I want to have a doc string here. It's going to tell me I had an uncoded string until I fix it and things like that. And maybe I'm going to write a test for it. The tab help, bring up the tab help. Oh, come on, there we go. The tab help shows you the instructions, and it also shows you which one you're on. So right now I need to enter a value for A, so let's make that one 2. And then I need to enter a value for B, and the B turns yellow. And then, so that's really nice. For those longer things, like using something like pandas read CSV, there are enough command line options in there for like any CSV file, but you have to remember them all. And so it's really nice to be able to see that help really quick and say, okay, what was the thing with the header has a different name and you need to rename a column, or I need to have a special, type conversion or something like that on a column. You can remember those things really easily and get the documentation up while you're typing. And those also work inside the notebook. So again, if I can tap, it's giving me a hint there with the blue line that there's hope. This gives you the documentation and yeah, the examples, everything straight from the docs. The other thing that's really handy is because Python's an interpreted language, it's most of the stuff that you install, you actually have the source for. So if you're confused about what something does, having a language server means you can go and hit Command B or Control B, depending on your operating system, and go look up the source really quickly. And again, the language server has loaded all of the libraries in my virtual environment, figured out what it has source for. And so when I say jump to definition, it just goes there. And I can say, oh, I had this question about what other options are there, because I didn't, I just didn't pay anything. It's like, oh, okay, I can do these other 2 options, and this is what they do, and here's the docs. And maybe, I've decided that this function here, my sum, doesn't have a great name. I can use, I can rename that to sum and rename it. So it's really good to have a language server for things like refactoring. But yeah, that's kind of the main functions of having a language server added to JupyterLab. And yeah, I was nervous and talked way too fast, and I apologize. But yeah, I'd love to answer any questions. This sort of the conclusion slide here. A plain Jupyter notebook is kind of how people get started in learning Python. But JupyterLab, when you start using it out of the box, helps you grow from just having a simple notebook with a view of only one thing to doing multiple file projects, to doing best practices like creating your markdown documentation, to adding a Git repo behind it, to like having like a refactoring tool from a language server where you can rename variables. I didn't talk too much about this, but if there's time and people are interested, we can talk a little bit about kind of exploring and finding various plugins. It's really good to not just blindly click. So this little puzzle piece here is like a directory of plugins. It's usually best not to just click on the install button. It's usually best to go and click on the documentation first and see if it has documentation and how the author of that plugin recommends that you install it. I find if you can just install it straight from pip, that seems to be a little more bulletproof than clicking on install inside of JupyterLab and hoping the JupyterLab rebuilds itself correctly and everything else. So I usually just want to track down those documentation things first to make sure that I'm installing it the way the author intended to install it. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there and take questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Janet. I mean, I learned a lot more with you than with my professor at university. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I thought it was going to take me a lot longer, and I think I was nervous, and I talked way too fast.
Yeah,
So I have
don't
like lots
worry.
of time left over for questions if people have any.
Yeah. Okay. I just gonna bring back Yannick, and he is gonna take care of the question.
Thank you again, Janet. I've got that too. Like sometimes I get really excited about something, and my flow accelerates, and people have to remind me to slow down. But that was very interesting, and I will remind everyone you can type your questions on YouTube or on Slack, and I will be really happy to relay them to Janet. There is one question already, but I will repeat this in French. Alors tout le monde, vous êtes bienvenus à taper vos questions pour Janet. Soit sur YouTube ou sur Slack. Et puis, je vais lui relier ces questions-là de vive voix. So, Janet, the first question is by Luciano, and he's asking if there is a difference between the regular runtime. I'm not sure if he's referring to the regular CPython runtime or the Jupyter Notebook runtime and the Jupyter Labs runtime.
They're both based on IPython. If I can go back within Jupyter Lab, if something, and I haven't had this problem in a while, but if you did have a problem where something did not seem to be working, where is, I haven't used it in so long, I'm not sure where it goes. You can go to Launch Classic Notebook, and that will make, so if something's not displaying the same way in Jupyter Lab versus Jupyter Notebook, that's kind of your escape hatch.
Mm-hmm.
So I have not recently had to use the escape hatch, but definitely when I was new to Jupyter Lab, some things were different. I think IPyMPL, I think you have a separate notebook extension that you run to get those interactive matplotlib things in Jupyter Notebook versus Jupyter Lab. And there might be some different notebook extensions that exist in notebooks that don't exist in lab yet, or that are lab extensions that don't exist in notebook, and you might want to switch back and forth. And so that's kind of your escape hatch.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And to cover the differences with the CPython runtime, I guess there are the magic percentage commands that would be inside both. Okay.
Yeah, so if I want to here go back to one of my own. Yeah, what's a good quick? Yeah, you can use magic in here if you want to. Let's make one. T equals 1 over 0. And I ran that. Obviously, that's not what I wanted to have happen. So let's go run the magic for debugging it and pretend I wanted to debug by cell or whatever. Those magics that you use in Jupyter Notebook also work in Jupyter Lab.
Very cool. And they would be the same as the IPython magics, but something we won't have in plain CPython.
Yeah, these are IPython notebooks, and so yeah, these aren't CPython notebooks.
Got it. Excellent. So hopefully that answers Luciano's question. I don't see any other question right now, so don't be shy, everyone. You can ask your questions. I have a comment. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by the Git integration plugin you showed, because you didn't show us how bad plain Git is at doing a diff of a Jupyter notebook, because it's JSON, and if you try to look at a regular diff on GitHub, it's absolutely unreadable. Wow, this is fantastic! Like we see exactly what changed, because I think the Jupyter notebook is probably all on one line. It's very minified JSON.
Yes.
So when you try to diff it with command line tools or GitHub or GitLab, it's absolutely unreadable. Wow, this is very good.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Like I said, it's still kind of, notebooks aren't specifically Git friendly because all of those diffs or those metadata wind up in your Git history. But at least you can look at it graphically, which is really nice. And you actually do have a choice in output sometimes. So my diff here can be displayed as HTML or as plain text, for example, which is like kind of like mind-boggling. And my metadata here, I can see that I had, the timer installed when I ran this. So the time changed by a few milliseconds or whatever and changed the metadata, which would be really annoying to have in your Git history. So.
Did you get a chance to try this plugin to resolve a Git conflict? So I see the 2-column format. Sometimes when you have a conflict with the upstream, it's easier with the 3-column format. I don't know if that's supported by this plugin.
I know that the underlying, this is actually based on a package called nbdiff. And I know that there is a conflict manager in nbdiff, but I don't think you can get to it from within jupyterlab. I think you'd have to run it. Yeah. Let's see if I can go find the man page. nbdiff. There it is. So version control, integration. You have this merge driver setting that you can make. So you can say to diff a Jupyter notebook, you have to like run these diff commands to in your .git config, and I don't have any of that set up in this demo environment.
Got it.
I set up like so many different Jupyter labs. But yes, if you go to the actual NBDime documentation, there is a way to create a merge conflict tool for notebooks.
Excellent. And then I presume, looking quickly at that documentation, that I would resolve my diff conflict on the command line, invoking diff merge, which will invoke the nbdiff.
The tools, yeah. Yeah, and then it opens up its own little, I don't know what's underneath it. You have probably like a Flask server or something to open up a new web browser tool for you.
Okay, very cool. Excellent. Let me see real quick if we have other questions. Otherwise, that might be the conclusion of this event.
Okay.
And I don't see any other questions. Thank you again, Janet. That was very enlightening, very dynamic presentation. Really loved it.
It's probably a little too fast, like I said, but yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. Thank you, Janet. Ok, ben, je pense qu'on est pas mal fini, Yannick.
Ouais, ça conclut pas mal qu'est-ce qu'on voulait faire aujourd'hui. Je pense que ça vaudrait la peine de mentionner ceux qui voulaient faire de la programmation en personne. On a notre événement de la semaine prochaine qu'on a dû malheureusement annuler. Donc, on n'aura pas notre journée de prog en personne samedi prochain, mais on vous revient là-dessus vers la fin du mois de janvier ou début février. On va annoncer une nouvelle date et puis on va se rencontrer en personne puis on va coder ensemble.
Oui, puis on vous invite tout le monde à y aller parce que c'est ça, là, plus de monde, plus de fun. Et c'est ça, fait que ben c'est ça, je t'ai gardé là pour des mots de fin. J'imagine qu'on n'a pas, j'imagine que je n'ai pas rien oublié parce que pour le moment, on n'a même pas notre horaire de l'année prochaine, fait qu'on ne peut pas rien annoncer là, sauf que, on va toujours annoncer des affaires plus tard. Tu veux répéter un peu tout ça en anglais?
Oui, je répète tout ça en anglais, puis j'ajoute ici là, un petit lien dans le bas de la page qui est aussi cliquable dans la description sur Meetup. Donc, après ce petit mot de la fin-là, on va se rencontrer en 5 à 7 virtuels pour prendre une bière puis célébrer la fin de l'année. Mais je répète en anglais ce que Dieu vient de nous raconter. So we had to unfortunately cancel our in-person programming day that was for next weekend. Don't worry, we will put a new date for early next year on the calendar and we will let you know. So follow us on Meetup. That's the best place to find out when we have a new event. And we don't have yet our calendar for next year. Me and Zuk are finalizing that over the holidays. But same thing, we will announce all of our events on Meetup. So if you are following us on Meetup, and the link to us on Meetup is in the description of this video on YouTube, then you will know everything we do in the near future. And now, the moment that you've all been waiting for, it is the virtual happy hour. So the URL that is right here at the bottom of the screen and clickable in the YouTube video description. We will just grab a drink, whatever is your preference for that. It's all up to you, and we will talk about whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, don't forget your drinks and join us at Senka set.
Excellent. Happy holidays, everyone, and we see you next year.